my skirt from the morning class, okay? And you can see that one thing I mentioned before taking it off to make sure you mark CFCB, because you can get confused. It's not like we have those big darts in the back to tell us, or the small darts in the front to tell us, right? Okay, so I took it off, and the first thing I did is I did my 90 degrees here at center front and center back waist. I also did it at the hem. And then what I did is I checked my waist arc, okay? So I took my chart and I checked to make sure, and I have all the little marks, and some of them are going to move a little, So, and actually before I did the waist arc, I actually drew the curve in, okay? So you're gonna try to connect as many of your dots as you can. And sometimes you have to like move the ruler a couple times to get the curve in. We want to try to make it smooth. So you can see I had to go down here. I had to go down here too, because we don't want a line that's undulating. It should be a nice smooth curve, okay? Same thing here where I did the ease tuck. Do you see how I ended up coming down a little? And that's okay. That's okay. So I drew it in so it's a nice curve. Then I took my ruler and I put it along the waist, and I checked my chart to make sure that I had the right amount of ease in there. And my front skirt is 7 3/8 plus a 1/4 inch, so 7 5/8. My back skirt is 6 3/8, and I had to add a 1/4 inch, so that's 6 5/8. So it was pretty close, okay? So I've got that. Then I went ahead and I drew in my side seam. Now you're gonna see I've got 2 side seams marked here, and I'll explain that in a minute, okay? So the original side seam I drew using the markings on the form was right here. I drew that in. And then on this back one, my original marking was right here, okay? I put it together and made sure that, they look like they're approximately the same length, okay? And I drew in the curve of my hem connecting the dots, okay? Again, smooth curve, okay? You want to make sure that it's a nice smooth curve. So we have to do something called balancing the flare, because if we leave this as it is right now, because we put exactly equal amount of flare, we're going to find that the side seam's not going to match the side seam of the form. It will not hang perpendicular to the floor. So we have to balance the flare. You probably did that in pattern making, right? Well, I do it a little differently than the draping book says to do, and my way is the right way. Everyone thinks that, right? But this is true. No. I like the way I do it better because I've been doing it for over 20 years, and I find it lays better. Okay, so what I do is I put the front down face up, and then I take my pin and I go through side waist, and I put it into the mark at the side waist here. Okay, so for right now you're just poking them together. Here at the front, this is the key. You want to make sure that this is parallel. Okay, so you match side waist. Okay, match side waist and make sure this is parallel. If you do, that'll help you balance your flare. Then what you do is you lift it up and you see, do the side seams match? Okay, they don't. Okay, so you're going to find the front's going to be over here, the back's going to be over here. So we have a decision to make. Do we want to go with the narrower one, but that will make the flare smaller? Do we want to go with the bigger one? Well, I might have to add fabric. I went between, okay? I did a happy medium. Can you see from over there? Yeah. Okay, so I went right in the middle, and that's what I chose to do. And now my flare should hang beautifully when it's on the form. Okay, the side seam should match the side seam of the form. Okay, so here's the review again. Match side waist, center front and center back should be parallel, then choose the happy medium. Okay, all right, once you've done that, then go ahead and redraw your side seam. And do you see the one that I'm not using? I did the 3 little marks that tells me that that's not the right one, and I put an arrow on the one that is the right one because I want to make sure, absolutely sure, I use the right one. Okay, same thing over here. The one that's the right one, I put these little arrows, and the one that's wrong, I did the ticks. Okay, as I'm grading the basics, and it takes me a while because I give you the most comments I'm going to give you on that one. So it's going to be a little bit longer. But make sure you're crossing out your lines really well so I know which one you intend. Okay, now I'm going to take my front and I'm going to fold it on that corrected side seam, and I'm going to match it at the waist first. Okay, because I know my waist arc is good. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold it. Oh, darn you. Okay, match it at the side waist. Sorry, got a little dramatic there. Okay, match it at side waist. I'm going to pin it there. And I'm going to go ahead and crease it on the new line. Make sure you're folding it on the one with the arrow, and pin it fabric to fabric. Try not to stretch it because you do have a bias edge here. And one thing we know about bias fabric is it stretches. So please be careful not to overstretch, because then you may find your hems aren't matching. Okay? And we're going to go ahead and do that all the way along here and pin it together. Okay? And then we're going to go ahead and put it on the form and see how it hangs. Okay? I don't think I quite got it here. Let me fix it. You can also go back and double check your side lengths to make sure they're the same. Okay, let's put it on the form. I end up doing this, like a lot of times. I get a lot of practice. We'll put it on here, matching it at center front waist, side seam, and center back waist. And that is not laying nicely there. Okay, so I'll put a pin there, and you can see the ease. You can see the ease that's in there. Okay, and then, so we have a flare here. My fabric's a little stiff, but we have a flare here. We have a flare here, and we have a flare here, okay? And that should have the same, when it lays down, should be matching the princess seam really well, okay? And princess seam's right there. So it's laying well, it's balanced, okay? So it looks like a little cheerleader skirt or something, it's so short. I use the bottom of the form to connect and cut. On the pattern though, we're gonna make it a little longer, okay? So that is that. I wanna also show you, I showed you the truing of the muslin and I put it up there on the board. Oh, another thing, trim your muslin down so it has like a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Don't trim it right on the stitch line, but trim it so there's not a bunch of fabric, okay? All right, so here's my my pattern for my Empire bodice, and even though I trued that, when I put it on the paper there were still some discrepancies, okay? So one thing I'm seeing is a couple things, that the patterns aren't necessarily being folded. And folding, when you turn your work in and I see your seams are folded, that tells me you walked your seams, okay? One seam is folded to line it up with the other, okay? And I want to see that you're folding your darts. So on the back basic bodice, some people aren't completely cupping the dart to the tip. And the thing I want you to do is fold the dart, cup it on the table, and draw it as a straight line. I'm seeing shoulders that are like V, okay? So really, really take a minute and make sure you get that right. The other thing I wanna see is the ease that we added at the shoulders. I wanna see that second line there, and I wanna see you crossed out the old line, okay? With the shoulder dart folded, bring the front together with the back, and we wanna make sure that blends beautifully as nice curves, okay? Side seam here, this should match well. And I know I always say start with a 90 degree. So one of the things I'm seeing is people are doing the 90 degrees, so that's really good. But then the curve coming off of it doesn't look so good. So do the 90 degrees, but make sure you create the curve so it's pretty, a nice smooth curve. We don't want to go like this and then, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It should be smooth, okay? So this is all good. Then we have our midriff. So we're walking our midriff pieces with our bodice pieces. So let me start with the back one. So I'm folding it, okay? And I'm walking it from center back to that first dart leg. Then I'm shifting it over to the second dart leg and walking it to the side seam. And when I get about an inch from the edge, I'm going to have it lining up, and then I'm going to draw on the side seam so it's perfect, okay? It should not go in and back out, right? I showed you that in the muslin. It should be a nice straight seam that if I put a ruler on it, it'll be one straight line, okay? Same thing in the front. So this notch right here is going to indicate where that sews to the back, and that those notches will match when we sew it together, okay? On the front, we have some notches for our gathering. So I extended the line out, and I just used my ruler, squared it out to the side, you know, the edge here, okay? Then I fold my front, and I'm walking it as well along there, and I'm marking where the notch should be. But I'm not going to walk the rest of it here because this is going to be gathered. This is going to be flat. So I'm going to start again over here, and I'm going to walk from the side to where that notch should be as well, okay?
Okay.
I want to make sure, again, my side seam is straight. So if I have about an inch of this together, this should be straight, okay? This should blend well with this, okay? Nice smooth curves. All right. All right. Another thing, make sure that when you turn your patterns in that they have all the grain lines, they label CB, CF. Also work on the neatness of drawing the lines and filling in the information as I asked for it. Also, if you do not have a notcher, I've seen some people, they're cutting wedges like this. That's not an accurate notch, okay? Because sometimes the line's over here, and sometimes people are just cutting like at an angle to it, and that's not correct. The notch has to be aligned with the seam perfectly. So instead of taking all that time, that takes a lot of time to cut those wedges. Instead, extend your line with your ruler and use a red pen and make a T. Okay, I understand I didn't have a notcher for the longest time when I was a student. I couldn't afford it. So everyone's got a red pen, right? So mark it as a T instead. Okay, and then it'll be more accurate and exactly, you know, what is needed. So when I walk these, I'm going to check that your notches are in the same place, and be very thoughtful about how you'll sew this, because this will sew to this, so we notch top and bottom. This will sew to this, so we notch top and bottom, okay? Notches tell us how much to sew and the direction to sew to. So really think about it when you're putting your notches on, okay? Shoulders, we notch here and here because we're gonna sew first the dart. The notches there tell us to sew the dart, and then the dart notches here tell us to sew the shoulder.
Okay.
Okay, just a review. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page, okay?
Okay.
I will be putting that up on the board. I am right now working on my pattern for the flare skirt from this morning. I already transferred it over. And then next class, I'll talk to you about truing that. One more thing before you, I think is going to help you. And it's in my, so tear your fabric and mark it as such, okay? If we have time today, I will let you pick your dress form and put your name on it. I've got some masking tape and I've got a Sharpie. So you can pick a full size form if you'd like to do that today. Next class.